Welcome to Abundantly Rooted, where we discuss the unequivocal truths of Scripture so that you may have hope in life circumstances. Join us as we discuss difficult topics and dig into the living Word provided by our Heavenly Father to put on the full armor of God so that you may stand firm and fight in confidence each battle in life. Hello and welcome back to Abundantly Rooted. I am your host, Kristina, and of course, my co-host, Beverly Shoemaker. Hey, Beverly, how are you?
Hey, Kristina, doing good today. Thanks.
And today we have the privilege to be here with Candy Thompson. Candy, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, thanks. Just love and thanks for having me.
Well, we are excited to talk to you today. The first thing I'd love for you to do is just share with our audience a little bit about who you are. Who are they listening to?
Okay, let's see. Of course, I'm retired, got gray hair, right? And have great grandchildren as well, 7, as well as 11 grandchildren. My husband and I have been married 40 years, a second marriage, and we live on the family farm in Oklahoma, down here, 140 acres with some cows. Retired, but I'm excited about what God is doing with me as far as a book I've written and called Liberated by Love.
And, oh, wow. Yeah. My husband would be so jealous. He wants to live on a farm with cows. That's cool. So today we're here to talk about a very interesting topic, the topic of feminism and the effects that it has on our culture. So the first question is, how do we define feminism?
Okay. You want me to go ahead and start with that? I'm going to attempt to do that because the way we see it biblically may be different from how it's seen in the culture right now. But in the 60s, I'm the only one of the three of us, who was actually alive during the time that this became popular in the culture. And in the 60s, when I was in high school, on into, in college, and then in the early 70s, when Roe v. Wade came in, it was given to women as the big word equality, because the women who were promoting it were saying that the women that were housewives, that were at home, were being suppressed by this masculine ego that men had, the male chauvinist. And that was the big word we heard. And so we were being indoctrinated by that. And yet many women only could look at what was going on in the culture and took from that the lies that they were promoting, because it was built on lies to separate men and women and separate the union and the commitment that the covenant that God had created himself for women in this place. So I don't know if I gave a definition, but it is usually defined as women's rights, that we have to have rights legally, that we have to have rights to have equal pay, that we need all of these rights, that women were paid less. They were not going into the workplace full time. They were not, at that time, they were in the home full time. And yet somehow we were deceived to think that going outside the home was going to be a better situation for us. And we could look around and see some women that seemed to be oppressed and that were abused and were treated badly. But mostly the housewife of the 50s and 60s, early 60s, had a great life. I mean, my grandmothers, they were honored and in their homes and had the wonderful skills of providing a great home. Okay. I don't know if I actually defined it, but
you did a good job. I like the way that you talked about this aspect of the biblical model, because you're right. God did design the man and the woman to marry and be one in the union of one, not be pitted against one another. And, who doesn't want to feel like they're appreciated and like they have they're being treated fairly? So what better way for the devil to get in there and pit people against one another and the basics of the foundation of a family, which is the marriage, try to tear that apart. So that's a good way to talk
seeing
about
men
that.
go out and seeing them work outside the home and come in with pay. I mean, listen, men had hard jobs out there. My dad was on the railroad. I mean, I don't think my mom wanted to go out there and be on the railroad, but you know, in the home, she was protected and she was provided for the best he could. And he would work how many ever jobs it took to keep that family going and to feed us. And, you know, there was the definition of roles, which women, you know, are different now. Sometimes but those roles were more clearly defined as, you know, in the home and outside the home. And, you know, I grew up in a godly home. And we had peace in our family, and we had a father who established the protection that we needed. He was the provider and the protector and the leader. And yet feminism came along and made it look like the woman was less than, and that she was not going to ever reach her potential unless she went outside the home to compete with the men that must have these wonderful jobs of, you know, professions and things. And so I was caught up in the, and I won't get into the personal, but, you know, I was encouraged to go to college by some aunts that were rather feminist, and that was how I was introduced to it in college mostly.
Candy, I'm just going to come from, you know, this other side of that. I don't think it was a bad thing. It was not a bad thing to go to college. What you were saying and what we're kind of talking about is, I mean, it was a good thing. You were single, you weren't married, and go to college and, you know, gonna get a career. But from what I'm hearing from you is they were putting this whole process on you that you're not enough. You will never be enough if you choose to be the stay-at-home mom. Like Kristina's a homeschool mom, and if you walk into that, and that's still in our culture today, that, you know, I see people like, when you say that that's what you do, they're like, you do what, you know? And I feel like that was, and I remember too from going to college, I'll just say that back, you know, too, that it's like, that is what was promoted, that you can, I remember that commercial, I can bring home the bacon, throw it up in the pan, you know, that I can do it all. And would you say that women are exhausted? Because not only do they work now, but they have to come home. They still probably do most of everything with the kids, plus get dinner, plus go to the grocery store, plus do the laundry, plus. So
right, yes, and not only are they exhausted, but we have from 1960, we have 9% of single mother families, okay, to up to like 30% now, headed by single women. And women are struggling and their children are suffering greatly because I was a single mom for 6 years. And, you know, right now we have a lot of statistics to show what we see in our culture, what has happened to our children. And we have feral children now because I could not take care of my children adequately. And we were still, even though I was professional, a teacher, we were basically struggling financially, living in an apartment complex where a child was killed, murdered. And on the other side of town, 85% right now of people in prison are fatherless, okay? 71% of fatherless children are dropouts, and 90% of homeless and runaway are fatherless. Okay, so the father has been denigrated to the point that even if he is in the home, he's probably going to be, his masculinity is going to be affected, and who he was made to be by God is being affected because it's so indoctrinated that these male characteristics are suppressive and oppressive. And that is not God's intention for that, okay? And so women are leaving and initiating divorce at 70%. And I've looked that up, it's extremely high. And so what they're doing is, you know, going and taking those children and trying to, of course, they're being shuffled back between, you know, how that goes. But trying to be both parents is impossible. You can't be. And so the statistics of poverty, and especially in minority families, that the poverty And so I had the mantra of, I don't need a man to take care of me. But let me tell you something. I now have a man who takes care of me. And I love it. But it's been a long process. And but women are suffering today because of the idea that I don't need to take anything, from this man. I mean, whatever. And so their children are being also victims of predators and pedophiles. They're targets out there. And we know of women who have let these men come in because we're seeking love. Our greatest need is unconditional love. And so this love, when it's not fulfilled in that context of a marriage for life, where we have that protection, and you get to be my age, you still have a man who loves you. Come on. And so their children are being attacked by the enemy, by Satan, in every way you can, from the education and on down the line. We all know what's going on in society when you hear it on the news, and we're startled every day at every new revelation of how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to jump in here and say that the whispers, the outright blatant shouts of people telling us that we are supposed to have this expectation or that expectation as a woman. Like Beverly said, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do your best. In fact, we're supposed to do our best because that's what God has gifted us, and he's talented us with certain things to stand in that for his kingdom. But when we look at it and say, well, I'm less of a person because I didn't do X, Y, or Z, and I have to, fight for that right because what I'm doing right now is not good enough. I think sometimes we're kind of jumping the gun. We're trying to figure out how we're going to fit into this space. And I can tell you for a fact that I've struggled with that as well. This whole thing, well, I went to college and I got this amount of education, and why am I home with my children? I was not always a homeschooler. I was not always a homemaker. I was a professional before, and, my mindset, and, we use this word mindset quite a lot here, was that, yes, I am a woman, hear me roar. I'm going to go out and I can do everything and you don't have to tell me anything. And so when it came time to homeschool our children, I was very opposed to it. I think I probably fought that for several years prior to where my husband looked at me and he says, hey, you know what, we're going to do this. And I was like, oh, you mean me? I'm going to do this, but the bottom line is that the effects of all of this stuff is really detrimental to our marriages, is detrimental to, us raising our children and serving his kingdom. Can we talk a little bit more about the male role? You can do it as in society, the way we look at the way that a man is now versus the way that God tells us a man should be.
Yes. Okay. Well, I don't know that I want a man who's like me. And I think society they've tried to make men more like women because we're more maybe emotional, they say. But men have to be crying with skinny jeans on. Now, I don't know. I want to go. You can cut that out if you want to. But the men that we look up to in society are weaker, I think, in a lot of ways. They might even look weaker because maybe to be macho and have the muscles can be even offensive now. And so men have to put themselves down to be accepted in a way, or to be something God didn't create them to even be accepted by a woman. And yet my grandson, was there. I've got beautiful, handsome grandson who's educated, has a good income. He can't find a woman that wants to be a wife. And so, going back a little bit, the women who did go out into the workplace went out and found a lot of, kudos out there as far as, hey, there's somebody out there that appreciates me. They don't appreciate me in my family and my home here, maybe I'm not appreciated enough. And so I can go out there and I can be what this boss or this person needs, or I can reach this ceiling and be respected and honored, and I can get what I need out there. And women went into the workforce and adultery went up, the divorce went up in the 80s. And that was the time of the greatest, when abortion just went up out of sight. And so did the family go down with divorce and all the things that were happening, because the women were going out, and somehow that became the most important thing to them. And the husband was no longer satisfying, or whatever. It can work both ways, of course. And in the past, it had worked with men being in that position. And this woman, all dressed up and beautiful, not rollers in her hair, with no makeup on, the one he left that morning to go to work. And she's out there, meeting his needs and bringing him coffee and looking all beautiful. And, when a woman is helping a man in what he wants to do and in his calling, that sometimes creates, it can create the separation that we're getting. Anyway, I don't know if I made myself clear on that, but it just seemed that that happened it started back then. And we've seen it more and more. And then abortion became necessary so women could go into the workforce and be who they were called to be.
What does God say is the role for the man, though? I mean, we see that what the women are doing now and what they feel is their role, and what the men's role is right now. But what does God say?
I didn't answer that very well. God says we're there to be the spiritual head, the head of the family. Okay. And so beneath that, it's not less than. We come along in a different position of equal. Jesus made us equal, in the spirit. But as far as his role now, to be that head, and I believe to be that leader too. Taking in consideration the wife, and to also love his wife as Christ loves the church. Women want unconditional love. We're made for that. And when a man will die for you and give his life for you, when he will jump in front of, a bullet and take that is the love that God put in them for us. And that was awfully hard for me to realize that my husband had that kind of love for me, because I had a lot of, hate, self-hatred and deprecation and in my life, and that's where I was when I met him.
Candy, I'm going to kind of piggyback on that. You touched a little bit about when Kristina asked you about the spirit, the man's role, how God created man. One of the biggest issues I had in marriage, previously, was just really respecting the man and recognizing his authority. But at the same time, when you're, if you're not in a healthy marriage and you're unequally yoked, it's really difficult to do that. But when I grew up a very rebellious person. So for me, men represented everything that I absolutely hated in life. I can say that. Right. But now that I am in a role and I have a husband who's very godly, I've been able to step back and trust him. Do you think that was a big issue, being able, to trust your husband needs to be in a place who God designed him to be, so that you can trust him in that authoritarian role? And that's not an ugly word, but it is an ugly word in the world of feminism.
It is.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what a godly husband, the way that God created a man to be, and his role as a godly husband?
Right. That is such a beautiful picture that God paints for the man and woman, and, one flesh. And then he compares Christ and the church to the husband and wife. And in Ephesians 5:33, it talks about husbands love your wives. And I love that love and respect series. And wives, husbands love, and that's love as your own body, that you would take care of that. This person is a gift to you. And we were created as a gift to men. And then wives, it says honor or respect your husbands. Now, we know that love is the biggest issue in society, that every card is made to love, love, love. But very few say, I respect you for what you're doing, not for their performance, because this is unconditional. We're talking about an unconditional love, and on the other side, an unconditional respect. That is hard to do if this man is not meeting up to the things that he maybe should as a father. Now, it was very hard for me I didn't respect my first husband at all. I wasn't walking with the Lord. He took me and abused me to have abortion. Okay. And I had abortions. But in my second marriage, that trust that you're talking about, you want to give that trust. It was very hard for me because a lot of women have been wounded and everything. And so as long as we're concentrating and focusing on that man and what he's doing, and he has to meet up to certain things, and then I'll trust him. We lost everything when we were 50 and 54. My husband worked hard. He was not a lazy person. He grew up working, and we lost everything materially. And that was the time. And God has restored it all and even more. And I will tell you, that was the time that God, because we didn't divorce, I wanted to blame him. I was thinking it's his fault. I was trusting him. I was submitting to him. I was working with him. And yet we didn't make it. It didn't work. And so we have come back to that place where I know that honor and respecting a man is because, God, I'm honoring you and obeying you when I do that. And that man, even if he is not a believer, it says that if we are the ones that are obeying God in this relationship. We are the ones that are seeking the Lord and his approval. And so this man now is leading, whereas I could have beaten him down with my words. I could have accused him and criticized him and shown him where he should have not done that or gone a different direction. And God helped me hold my tongue. He helped me. And I have a man that has been restored from that, and we have. So I don't know if I answered that, but I trust him, but I trust God more. Okay.
Right.
I trust him because he loves me, but it's been a process.
You know, I think a lot of times we don't think about, as women, or anybody, we see things from our own perspective. And I've been telling Beverly about a book that I've been reading for a Bible study we're doing. And in one of the chapters, she talks about basically this exact same thing. She talks about, hey, you made a promise, but your promise is ultimately to the Lord. Well, obviously, if you're in a situation that is dangerous, you know, we're not talking about that. But if you're in a situation where your heart is just not towards your husband, that the way that you act towards him can change him passively, you know, so that he can seek the Lord. And, you know, by our actions and our help, because we are the helpmate, you know, and our diligence in following the Lord and saying, hey, God, I don't like this. I don't understand what's going on here, but I told you that I was going to be obedient and I'm going to stay here and let you work. And God has the power to turn all of that around, like you said, and make it even more beautiful. I want to talk really quickly before we wrap up the show about the Proverbs 31 woman, because a lot of people may be looking at this and saying, hey, what about her? I'm supposed to be like her. And she did all of the things. I mean, she was amazing and she stepped into so many things. Can you address that and how she was with her husband as well?
I love her because she was in a very oppressive society. Okay, she was where women were definitely oppressed. And but she was favored by her husband because of the way she managed her home. She took what he earned. Okay, she didn't get her own money or seed money to start out all that business. She was a businesswoman. She was, you know, the family prospered. She took maybe even little and made more. And so when I think about the industriousness in that home and how her children and her husband called her blessed, and what she was a busy woman. It reminded me of my grandmother who sewed clothes for her girls, and they had the nicest clothes in school. It reminded me of how she had a garden and grew things and put those up and fed them well. And how she knew all these crafts and all these things to do to keep her home the way she could do, so that when they went out, I was watching these little birds on our porch being born and now flown away. They were pooping outside their nest. I didn't know birds did that. They turned their little bottoms around and pooped on my porch instead of in their nest. And I thought, we can poop in our own nest. I'm sorry, that maybe you don't want to hear that, but I probably would have done that early on. I did that in my first marriage, and it's a place we don't want to be, but this is a place that smells good. This is a place where where family gathers, where things, my grandmother took the little salary he made, and she made a home, a beautiful home. And so she was a manager, and I just love that she gave also, that she had enough to give, that they didn't lack in anything, because when you trust the Lord, He's going to show you ways in your home to save money. Right now, we need that. We need to know how to buy. We need to know how to prepare. We need to know, along with our husbands and what they're doing, so they are honored when they have a home and a wife behind them. And believe me, that unconditional love that you want, you'll have it. Okay, that your greatest needs are going to be met. And we're still believing for family to come together and some things that God still is working on. But I'm telling you, where I am now, I am so thankful. I am so thankful.
That's wonderful, to be able to be in that place in your life and have that security and
Yes.
to be thankful.
Yes. So I don't know what else about her, but she was the most industrious woman, and we can be like that, but don't put yourself up if you're not there yet. It's a process, right?
I think that it's about, like I said before, like our gifts and our talents, the things that He's designed us for before we were even born. It's about living in the best part of that, because we are ultimately here to serve Him and His kingdom and bring people to His kingdom. And when we do that, we can't view ourselves as lesser than. We don't have to fight for that right to be the best we can be, because we're already standing in that. We're standing in His design for us. So, Candy, I know that we are coming back in a second part of your story, and you're going to share your testimony on abortion and deliverance from that. But before we leave this particular show, can you share with everybody in the audience where they can find you?
Sure. Okay. I'm still working on, I have a website, and it's Candy at liberatedbylove.org. Candy at liberatedbylove.org. And so that's that. And then I have the same email, okay, Candy, at liberatedbylove.org. Okay.
Okay. And so that's your book, Liberated by Love. Where can they find that? Is that on Amazon and all the places?
It is. And the subtitle is Finding Truth Beyond Lies and Pain. And it's Candace Thompson, ACE. So that's the subtitle. And it is there. And there's this real happy woman there on the outside. That's not me. But it's like, she represents me, because I'm a praise and worship woman, and I'm dancing in church all the time. It's like, okay, let's, God's good.
We're so thankful that you joined us, and we look forward to hearing all about your testimony and information to reach these people and talk to them about your story, your personal story, in our next episode. So for you guys out there, and you want to hear about her testimony on abortion and how she made it through that and what happened and what it looks like now, please join us for that next episode. Thank you, Candy, for being here. Thank you, Beverly.
Thanks.
And we ask that you continue to be blessed and bless others, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
So now getting a subscription box is all the rage. I don't know anyone who doesn't love to receive fun mail. With so many out there, it can be so difficult to know which ones to choose. Maybe think about Artsa. Artsa is a company that has a subscription box that takes you on a journey through the Holy Land. Each quarter, they feature a different city in Israel and tell its story, past and present, while they source amazing items that you cannot find anywhere else from 7 to 8 local artisans. It's a mix of food, gifts, and amazing content that delivers the Holy Land to your doorstep, all while supporting the small businesses and people who call the Holy Land home. Grab the code in the comments to get 25% off of your Artsa box. It's Artsa Kristina Reisinger, ARTZA Kristina Everyone moves through ups and downs in life. Knowing that your Heavenly Father is your stronghold and not the circumstance you face can give you the hope to persevere and begin living in your God-given purpose. I'm so glad that you're here listening today and want to invite you to join me in pursuing the Lord in all aspects of your life. Continue listening as we release the waitlist for something special that we have been developing behind the scenes.
This has been a production of K2 Media.